sharing the live stream. Okay, we are live. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Karwan. I'm Ishan Sharma. And if you're new to the channel, please do subscribe to it. There's a small, beautiful red button that you have to click. It doesn't cost anything, but might help you gain some more knowledge and to help you explore the past more critically. So today we are here to discuss a book and to discuss a segment of history that is absent or blurred in our memory. And to deliver today's Caravan special lecture, I have a very special guest, Ari Gautier. Ari Gautier is a French writer and a poet of Indo-Malagasy origin, dedicated to giving Pondicherry its rightful place on the French literary map. Ari is committed to increasing Indian-francophone literature's visibility in the world. Carnet, Secret, the Lakshmi, and the Thinnai are two of his works on the history of the city where he spent his childhood. And his most recent publication, Nocturne Pondichéry, a collection of short stories on post-colonial Pondicherry, has recently come out. In May 2020, he, along with Ananya Jahanara Kabir, another of our speaker, co-founded the cultural forum Le Thinnai Kreyol, and he currently lives in Oslo. And I have got this beautiful book, the English translation of Le Thinnai, The Thinnai, by Ari Gautier, and it's translated from the French original by Blake Smith. And it's a beautiful book. I I judge books by their covers, and it has got a beautiful cover. So, without further ado, I welcome our speaker, Ari, to deliver his Caravan special lecture titled French India Memory in the Sea of Amnesia. Thank you so much, Ari, for joining us. Over to you.
Once upon a time, there lived a rich, prominent Nawab in the region called Aruvanadu. The life in its equal goodness had filled him with many beautiful and intelligent daughters. But a cloud of obstinate sorrow overshadowed his radiant life. For however opulent he was, Sher Khan Lodi, by the fate of his last born daughter, was devoid of all beauty. She did not arouse any interest in the suitors who were jostling for the affection of her sisters. The twin sisters, Arugan Medu, Arikemedu, and Arugan Kupam, Ariangupam, boasted of their spiritual past. Shramana, Arugan monks, had long lived an established Buddhist monastery in the mango grove of Kakayantopu, where there's still a statue of Buddha. Yavana, Romans, and Phoenician merchants had long courted them for the ancient charms. Bahur, the scholar, was proud of her knowledge, which she taught in her Veda Sala. The elder sister, Vilyanur, adorned with her magnificent bilba trees, was coveted by the King Dharmabala. Krishna Deva Iyer, the emperor of Vijayanagar, was seduced by Ujavar Karai, who was the region's granary. Her endless green sari, dotted with yellow rice shoots, would have made the despicable Duryodhana dizzy. Another sister, Tiruvakkarai, displayed her charms in the river of Sankaraparani, where spotted deers, antelopes, hares, bonneted macaques, and wild boars frolicked happily, while Raja Desing pined for her, sitting on her eternal banks. The king of Edian Chavdi, tired of courting the beautiful Irumbai, was dying in incurable sadness. But the charmless youngest daughter with the name of Seri was moping around a tiny pond where a Paunchi Ganesh was bored to death by the Gulf of Bengal. A few Siddhas played hide and seek in, insignificant temples that slept, caressed by the waves of the ocean of salty tears that the girl was shedding miserably. The Nawab was happy, however, when one day strangers came knocking at his door to ask for the hand of the unfortunate girl. But his joy was short lived. The Manavare was not even dismantled that the Portuguese abandoned the unfortunate woman. The rope of the tali of the girl had hardly dried that the Vikings found her irreconcilable and left. One October evening in 1673, the fishermen of Kirapallium welcomed a French Prince Charming, who was going to change the cursed path of the young girl, which the scoundrel face has traced. Everything changed from that day on. The ill-fated girl was transformed into a beautiful princess. She adorned herself and displayed her fabulous wealth with disdain. She changed her name according to her moods and ended up triumphantly naming herself Pondicherry. Quickly, her disdain dressed in the ignominious mask of arrogance and contempt. Thirsty for power and blinded by revenge, the odious princess, afflicted with colonial leprosy, began to gnaw at her sister, destroying them in misery and subjugation. Their unfortunate children left their mothers to come and find refuge with the stepmother who sent them to the four corners of the world to exalt her name that she bore with pride. Killed in trenches of the two wars, humiliated in the Sugar Islands, drugged into China, their brains wrapped in the tricolored cloth, these wretches came back to snuggle up in his feti's bosom. After a long, glorious period, Pondicherry the despot fell into a deep sleep, pampered by lazy kings. In the meantime, other foreigners arrived and woke up the ogress. She now looked like a monster, and since then, eager to restore a bygone era, they cling to the limbs of her putrid body, which is beginning to decay. Her once radiant face looks like a mask, where a diabolical grin frozen in eternity invites the whole world to come and kiss her feet. The newcomers pile up the debris of her pestilential flesh and parade her from festival to glorify her colonial heritage. So, this is, as you might know, first of all, Eshan, thank you very much for inviting me. And I'm really happy to be here. And you've been doing a fantastic job. So, today I'm going to mostly talk about Pondicherry and the French presence there. Uh, Recently, when my book came out, there's a couple of reviews in Bookstagram, and one person asked a very pertinent question, which was why this book is written in French in the first place. So the person has been to Pondicherry many times, but however, he didn't know there was a linguistical French heritage in Pondicherry. So I answered him back, it's very sad that you've been to Pondicherry and not noticed that there's still a community of Franco-Pondicherry who are still speaking French. But at the same time, it's also legit for him to ask this question because there is no literature from Pondicherry uh, to talk about the French presence and the memory of the French presence. So it was it was normal, and the absence of literature, I've already written about this in a different article. So I'm not going to talk about that. I'm mostly going to talk about Pondicherry as what is Pondicherry. So Pondicherry, Puducherry, Bandiceri, Pulucherry, or Pallicherry. In different times, this name Pondicherry is coming, but without any proper historical evidence what was the name of this place. Local historians like Jean-Baptiste Prashant-Moore has come with one of the most grotesque definition, saying it's called Pondicherry because the Arab navigator Sultan Al-Mari, as mentioned in his novel, in his book. And so Pondicherry, according to him, comes from Bandi, which is in Telugu, means Bandi, it's a vehicle, and Cheri is a place where low-class people live. But first of all, one is to know that Cheri comes from the Tamil name Cheru Eri. Cheru means mud, and Eri means lake. So it is a place where there's a lake where people used to live. And if one goes back to my novel, Carnet de Lakshmi, I explain that the place what we call now Pondicherry next to the for Saint Louis, there was Manal Kulam. That's what it's called, Manakula Vinayagar. Manal in Tamil means sand. Kulam again, it's lake. So that temple was already existing. So there is no way that Pondicherry, it's the name of it's a derivation of Pondicherry, because Cherry, as one know, is a place where people live. It's not something to do with any traffic or anything else. And so the Portuguese call it Puluchera, the Dutch call it Pulusere. So there must be something to do with Pulu and Palli. And finally, after researching for the last 20 years, I've been working on Pondicherry through my books. And one of the name I found in my book, Thinnai, is the name Kursukupam. Kursukupam is the place where the entire story happens. So for many years, people didn't know what Kursukupam is. The name Kursukupam comes from. And most of the people think because of the Kursu, which is the cross in Tamil, because of the San Francis church. And after many months of research, I found out it comes from the Kurichi, which is a small silver fish, which is around that area. And when I was young, I used to see these fishes drying in front of the houses. So it made sense for me that it's not Kursu as the cross, but Kurichi because the village existed before the church. And here the same thing for Pondicherry. I found out that it's nothing to do with Puducherry as a new town, but it's to do with Pallicherry. Palli means it's again a community of Vanyar, who's a Banya, who has come and settled down because during the Vijayanagar Empire, the cotton trade was very much demanded. So it's normal that the Vandiar, who are the merchants, they come and settle down and call it Pallicherry. And cherry is not a derogatory word as it is now, because those days there was even cherry for the Brahmin. There's a Brahmin cherry. So it's nothing to do, but now it became a Paracherry where Paria lives. So in the course of the time, the name cherry has a derogatory connotation, but those days it was not. So that's why I really think, I am convinced that the name of Pondicherry doesn't come from Puducherry or Pondicherry, it comes from Pallicherry, which makes more sense. At the advance of the Europeans, the village Pondicherry was just a few hamlets of fishermen. That's what the narration says, the French narration says, that it was a fishing village, and when the French people came and developed it. But it can't be true, because not even 500 meters from where the Fort Saint-Louis was built, there were a few temples, and in the same place where exactly the Fort Louis, there was already abandoned Shiva temple, which is the southeast corner of the fort. So there were already few temples and the community live around. So it cannot be just a fishing hamlet if there's already 3 temples. There was a Vedapurishwar, there was a Perumal temple, and there was a Ellayamman Koil temple, and this Shiva temple, which was abandoned. So I refuse to think that it was just a fishing hamlet that the French people came and developed it. Now, of course, they did develop the area, but one has to understand that Pondicherry, as we know now with the different communes around, is not the Pondicherry at that time, because these communes, what they call commune, those days there were separate villages and under small chieftains. Like, for example, Villeneuve was under King Dharmarajapala, and Eden Chavdi had a king. So there were small kingdoms around, which was under the big Chola Empire. And that's how, before it was under the Pallava, and then it became Chola. And the Bahut plates is a testament of how the Pallava king Naratungavarman of the 6th century, and there was a Vedasale, there was a Vedic school there. So that's why I'm saying that Pondicherry was a fishing hamlet is a little absurd. And not only that, during those days, Pondicherry was well developed town with a lot of infrastructures. Like, for example, there was already more than 56 irrigation lakes, 9 big canals, 202 water ponds, 53 reservoirs were in Ojugare, Villeneuve, Bahur, and other places. And more than that, there was temples, and there were a huge community of weavers which were producing cotton and indigo for the Portuguese and other people who were trading with Pondicherry. And but it's interesting to know that the last people who came to Pondicherry are the French people, and before that the Portuguese came, the Dutch came, the Danish came, and of course at some point the English came, but that was later on. So I'm gonna say a couple of words how the French trade started here, and let me find my papers, which I will find it now. Lost with my papers. Sorry for that. So yeah, the French trade started very long time back, before Louis XIV and what's his name, Jean Colbert. Already during the reign of Henri IV, they had attempt of sending ships to India, and that was some merchants from Rouen who started this trade, and but it failed many times because there was no strong investment from the French entrepreneurs those days to send, compared to the Dutch or the Portuguese. So the starting were quite shaky in the beginning, and Henri IV and Richelieu, who found the necessity to send people to India, sent many ships, but it never reached Pondicherry because they stopped in Madagascar and it never went further. And in 1670, already in 1666, the French had sent some people, and that they made the Armenian Markara, Avashan, from a native of Julfa near Tehran. One has to understand that the Armenians were already there for many years before the Europeans, doing trade and being the middleman with a lot of trade. So during the peaceful reign of the king Henri IV, the Compagnie de Dieppe was established in 1604 already. And then it became later the Compagnie of Maluc in 1615. So this company fitted Saint-Louis and Saint-Michel, two ships under the commanders of Nicolas Frotté de la Bardelière and Louis Hans de Decker, which is Dutch crew. So they set sails to Java from Saint-Malo in 1616, and Saint-Louis reached Pondicherry in July 1607. That was the first ship who has reached Pondicherry forever, from a French ship. But as I said, the powerful finance minister Richelieu made a declaration in the French Assembly that is going to form a big trading company and thus to compel the French merchants to participate in Eastern trade. So in October 1626, Richelieu was proclaimed the great master and superintendent general of the navigation and commerce of France. So from that time till 1650, French sailors explored the sea route to India through the Cape of Good Hope. And then when Mazarin became the finance minister under Louis XIV, the commercial expansion was totally neglected because of frequent war with Spain. And no serious efforts were made until Colbert. And Colbert planned to form a powerful, strong, rich companies protected by the government, like the Dutch companies, as I mentioned earlier. And then in 1664, the company sent three people, Bébert, Mariage, and Dupont, who traveled through land route to Isfahan with a letter from Louis XIV to the king of Persia. And the three men reached Isfahan in July 1665, where they were cordially welcomed by the king of Persia, who granted them special concession for trade. And they were joined by other French sailors such as Boulaye Le Gouze, Thévenot, and Tavernier in March 1666 in Surat. And thanks to the Capucin, Father Thévenot, Father Ambroise de Preuilly, the relation between the Surat governor and these three people were very, very cordial. And they were sent to Aurangzeb, from whom they obtained a favorable firman. And on September 1666, Aurangzeb ordered the governor of Surat to earmark the site of Swani. So this is how the first French presence come to the subcontinent. And so they start to explore the different ways of means to start the trade. And in 1667, at the end of September, François Martin was appointed merchant of the company. So François Martin is considered as the father of Pondicherry because he's the person who really established the trade in Pondicherry and la loge, as they call le comptoir, to build the fort. And in 1668, Caron was left for Dauphin, met up with Bébert, one of the company's envoy to the Persian Mughal courts in Surat. And then he is the one who started the factory in India and took Samson Banyan as a broker, because the brokers are very important in the trade, and mainly for French people who didn't have master. The only language which was speaking that time, it was Portuguese. Portuguese was a language, lingua franca, for the trade, not French. So the broker, they were speaking different languages. That's one of the reasons they've been called Dobashi, because they're speaking two languages. So in this way, so Samson Banyan was the first broker appointed by the French to establish themselves in India. And in 1669, François Martin comes from Madagascar, and he arrives in Surat, and and he's starting the trade in Surat before coming to Pondicherry. And so this is the first attempt or first steps where the French people established themselves in India. Uh, but all these episodes are not taught in any schools or uh, anywhere, because for some reason the colonial narrative makes us to believe that everything went smooth. They came to India, they met Aurangzeb, they met Sher Khan Lodi, and Sher Khan Lodi gave him a piece of land in Pondicherry, and they started. But the fact is not that. There was so much push and pull and so much negotiation went between different parties and to acquire this land in India. For example, Pondicherry was not just given like this, because French people, the French, they managed to understand the different rivalries between kings in India, and by supporting one against other, they could get hold onto the place. So, for example, Pondicherry was not given because French supported Sher Khan Lodi in the fight against the king of Golconda. So, instead of uh, Sher Khan Lodi was supposed to give them money, but since he didn't have enough financial capacity, so he said, take this place and please establish yourself here, so that there is no kind of monopoly of the Portuguese and the Dutch. So it is not just giving a piece of land. So and that went all over. It's not only in Pondicherry. Like in 1670, the French obtained from the king of Kannanur the trading post of Pondicherry, Rajapur, and Mirzai, all three on the Malabar coast. And the later was abandoned in 1672 and occupied by the Dutch. And the and the same thing happened also to Chandanagar. Boulot de Delon sent to Ugly counter first settled the city in 1690 in the lodge of Chandanagar in the Portuguese quarter of Bandal. However, since he wanted to found a private establishment and could not find a favorable location in Ugly, he thought of claiming the land that Duplessis has obtained in 1674, a league and off of below of the city of the village of Chantanagar, located on the banks of the river. The Dutch trading post being in the vicinity, the latter addressed the complaint to the governor of Ugly and to the Mughal and Bengal in Dhaka. The French were forbidden to build on this site. Delon then charged Gregor Boutte, chief of the lodge of Dhaka, to defend the interest of the company before the Nawab and finally obtained full satisfaction. So, and then in April, he immediately began the construction of enclosing wall, good buildings and considerable stores, on which the Jesuit father Duchas Chaplin was the architect. So the name of the city has a double etymology. According to some, Chudonogar, city of sandalwood. According to others, Chudronogar, city of the moon. The habit of designating Chandanagar by Kontwa Dugli remained, however, even unofficial till 1696. And so this is how different laws were obtained by the French people in order for them to start the trade. And when come back to Pondicherry, Pondicherry was a very major trading center. And of course, the French developed the city, the urban development became very prominent. And the trade also was very flourishing. François Martin, who was actually François Martin has a very peculiar peculiar life because he's an illegitimate child uh, born in Paris, and he was not at all meant to become a sailor or navigator. But fate has taken him to Pondicherry, where he became quite quite famous, and he's the architect behind the French trading post. So Pondicherry at a certain point was a main trading post, which was dealing with cotton, indigo. The indigo of Pondicherry was very famous and was very popular among Europeans, not only among Europeans, but it was also taken to different places in Southeast Asia, like Malacca, Java, even up to West Africa. And as I say in my book, Thinnai, even at one point, indigo was became uh, um, the money, exchange money, to buy slaves and to send them to Africa, to the Caribbean. And so in that way, Pondicherry was very, very important. And then comes Duplex. Duplex, again, is a very ambitious person who comes quite late and want to conquer India. And he's even called himself the Nawab. He was called the Nawab of India. But Duplex hyper ambition, according to certain historians, says that had Duplex not been so ambitious, the English would have never colonized India, because the competition between French and English was so strong that they thought that they copied the model of Duplex. Duplex were very aggressive in his way of establishing himself, the power in Pondicherry. Then again, his um, his alliance with Tipu Sultan also made a big impact, which reflected in the entire political situation in India. And so Duplex settled down in Pondicherry, and Anandaranga Pillai was his Zubash. Anandaranga Pillai again is a very powerful Dubash who has written this wonderful diary, which is a reference for any historians interested in French India, which trace many years of the day-to-day life of the French practices, and how the interaction between the French and Indians in Pondicherry. So Duplex, he stayed in Pondicherry for some time. Then later on, he also moved to Chandanagar, and where he was, he had his, he not only moved, he moved to Chandanagar to establish, to reinforce the trade. He had also his private business. This is the problem with the French presence in India. Contrary to English and Dutch, uh, every governor or every sailors would travel to India had their own personal agenda. And that, I think that's one of the reasons that the French presence was not so successful, because there's miscommunication between the shareholders back in France and the governors or the rulers in India were totally in total disaccord. They'd never been agreed on the policy, on the politics to do in India. For example, Duplex hyper aggressive ambition was not seen as a good sign back in France, and they wanted to remove him for so many times that they never managed. But even when Duplex went back and died in misery, and nobody came to rescue him from what he did. He was just been seen as a villain. And so one of the reasons that's why I'm saying that Duplex own ambition, own personal agenda also made that the French presence was not very successful. At one point, Duplex also, the man who dreamt to become the Nawab of India, had a small village in around Pondicherry called Mortandi, which is called Duplex Pete. Duplex Pete, he just put himself a small village and call it on his name. And anyone who doesn't, who says Mortandi in instead of Duplex Pete, would have been fined and canned in the public place. So the man who dreamed to become Nawab couldn't even manage to rule the small piece of village which was Mortandi. So all this to say that the French presence, however, trade-wise they were successful, but politically they were very, very weak, and they never managed to come to the level of English or the Dutch people. And from that time, after, of course, François Martin, there are several governors came like Dumois, Lenoir, and other people. And of course, the other major figure is Duplex. And after Duplex died, there was several governors, but like insignificant. There's nothing big happened from that time to what I call already the struggle for independence, because Pondicherry, and however, like for example, just imagine one second if India was ruled by French people. In 1881, the French Conseil Supérieur, or the French government, came with that idea of renonçant. And renonçant means you to renounce to your customs and religion, and you became from the subject, you became a French citizen. So can you imagine if India was ruled by French people, and this renonçant system came, like millions and millions of Indians now will be sitting and speaking French or become word French. I think would have been a interesting situation. So when in 1881 they came with that idea of renonçant, a lot of people from the lower class opted for this solution, because they could evade the very rigid Indo-caste system, which I'm explaining in my novel, and that makes people to access to French education, to French language, and also to work in the French administration. Here it's very, very interesting to see how identity change from being subject of a colonial power. You become a citizen where you're given the rights to vote. And one should know that Pondicherry is the first place in India where democratical vote happened. And by doing this, you are culturally, the Indian became by citizenship they became French, but culturally they remained Indian. So that ambivalence between being a Franco-Pondicherry or Franco-Indian remains till now, and we're still struggling to know if we are Indian or if we are French. And but beside that, during that colonial the independence struggle in 1954, when French decided to leave, and it was a really messy decolonization process, because French were not really prepared to leave India. And there was a lot of negotiation between Mendes France, Nehru, Krishnan Menon, and other people also involved, because the French people thought that by leaving India, Pondicherry and the other enclaves, they could have only triggered the other independent struggle happening in Indochina and Algeria. So their fear was really legit in the sense that it might have a snowball effect all over the French Empire. So 1962, when finally they decided to leave, they asked to the people of Pondicherry if they want to choose of being French or Indian. But the people who are already Renaissance didn't know they had to choose again in 1962 because in 1881 they were French, and why in 1962 they have to become French again. So misinformation and not enough information, in fact, and uh, uh, take took people in a total confusion where they didn't know what to do. So I think there was only 6,000 or 7,000 people that time who opted for the French nationality. The remain stayed Indian, but that created a total imbalance in the Pondicherry society, and until now we can still see that when you walk on the streets of Pondicherry, some people speak French, some people speak Tamil or any other language, and there's still that ambivalence of identity between in the society. All this to say that the French presence is still there, but then again, memory, as my titles say, in the sea of amnesia, is totally erased because neither the Indian remember that Pondicherry was French, neither the French nor the French remember that they had a colony or comptoir in India, because one of the first experience that I had when I moved to France when I was at the age of 15, asked me, "Oh, you speak French? Where are you from?" I said, I'm from India, but India was British colony, right? No, there was five comptoirs. Oh yeah. Then they remember one song from Guy Bea with the five comptoirs. So that only cultural reference or song reference which reminds them about India, because they're not been taught about colonial history in France, and nobody remembers, and there's no literature as per se existing in India. And even if uh, there are literature, most of the literature is written by French people, and no indigenous writers like me has ever written anything about Pondicherry. So it's totally normal that these people don't know their own story, and even for many years at the colonial school, history was taught on the model of how do I say, free school by geographical zone, actually. And in fact, many professors taught at both institutions. Practitioners dominated teaching at first, like the colonial administrator Etienne Emonier, who gave a course entitled History, Religion, Mores and Customs of Indochina. So what they used to do between these two world wars, academics and agrégé and doctor progressively imposed themselves and used to teach only the colonial story according to geographical zone. Like, for example, Albert Martin, Georges Hardy, Johannes Tramont, the former professor, general history of colonization and comparative colonization, while the latter developed an administrative conception of colonial history that tended to divide the imperial space into how could I say, into distinctive entities whose teachers strove to demonstrate their geographical, ethnic, and cultural coherence. So, for example, if a teacher, if one has to teach at school, they used to teach history of the colonial history of Algeria, of Indochina, and in the colonial school, there's not one place and not one teacher who has taught the history of Pondicherry or history of India. So that says that the memory we are talking is totally erased uh, in French and in India. I think that's one of the reasons that when I started to write, and I wanted to write about Pondicherry. I could have written about anything else, but I wanted to write about Pondicherry because exactly to revive this memory, to extract this memory, and to say that India is not only a British colony. There were other enclaves or other people who came and settled and did trade with India. For example, the Dutch, the Portuguese, the Danish, and so and so. But the narrative now it's mostly about the British India being a British colony, and that's one of the reasons that the platform we created with Ananya Jahanara Kabir that you had previously is exactly to revive these memories and to to revive these memories in the sea of amnesia, and not to forget the cultural encounters and all what we have now in India are a product of this contact zone, as Ananya Jahanara Kabir rightly says, and how culture and other commodities or other cultural elements uh, is part of our day-to-day life now in India. And I think we need more and more this kind of historical memorial, what do you call, reviving, in order to counter the cultural hegemony which we have to resist now in India. And so it's very important that what Karvan, Ishan, what you're doing, and other people, that we're not alone. We are many other people doing the same type of projects in order to revive memory, in order to talk about history in a different way. Not of course teaching history is always good, but for example the for a long time teaching history, Tamil Nadu history, it was only about kings and this temple or that temple, this culture or that culture, but we totally forgot the maritime, the coastal area of Tamil Nadu, and how the Chola kings were doing trade with Southeast Asia, and how the Maracaier, fantastic Muslim community, uh, were trading in Southeast Asia. So all these cultural elements which was brought back to India and taken from India also to these places are again the what I call the sign of a very healthy humanity. For me, it's very important that the more we dig into in history, the more we find some common ground as people to live in peace and harmony. So by saying that, Eshan, I think I come to certain point. So je crois que je suis bon, n'est-ce pas? Tu parles français. I know you speak French. So
Very little. Thank you so much, Ari, for that beautiful lecture, which I think was very important for us to highlight. And as you mentioned, many instances in your lecture about how we have forgotten about the French connection and the heritage that we have in Pondicherry. Um let's see if we have any questions from our audience. Um, as of now, I cannot see any question, but we have put up the link to get this book, the Thinnai. If you can see the cover, it's you can click on that link. Those who are watching us, they can click on the link and they can read the excerpts on Kindle. We have uploaded that link. So do read that book and do get this book ASAP. It's available in India in English. And if you want to read it in French, like I'll try if if I get that kind of
Actually,
proficiency.
no, Eshan, it's a real tour de force for me, to have this kind of concise historical walk, because 350 years is not that easy to know. But I try to do that. I hope it made sense.
Yes, and even your first book, Carnet Sacred de Lakshmi, it talks about a sacred elephant who, is has come to Pondicherry, I think, and she finds some
Yeah,
flying fish and
Carnet
everything.
is a rebellion novel, um, where actually talking about Pondicherry. How do we talk about Pondicherry without talking about the historical aspect of Pondicherry? You
Yeah,
see, and that's one of the reasons that I'm very much involved into that, because there used to be what they call the colonial novel. The colonial novel, as we all know, it's a kind of all these cliches, stereotypes of a white man coming to India, falling in love with a brown girl. They marry, they have some problem because they're not from the same race, they're not from the same caste, and at one point the girl will escape and marry the guy, and then they'll go. So this is the typical colonial novel, or vice versa, is the brown girl who is in love with the white man. But so I wanted to move away from the stereotype of literature, and tell a new way of telling the story
mm,
and history. And Kaneswa Lakshmi is again the thing. It talks about the pre-colonial Pondicherry and the post-colonial Pondicherry at the same time, with all the historical evidence and facts, and of course anthropomorphism, morphorism. It's an interesting way of telling story, because when the animals are telling stories, I
yeah,
mean, we need to put our head in shame.
yes. And we look forward to the English translation of that, The Secret Diary of Lakshmi.
It is already been translated,
Uh-huh.
and but unfortunately, I'm still looking for a publisher. So
Mm.
if there is any publisher looking this event, please take Lakshmi with you, please.
Yes, that
She's
will give the
fantastic.
publisher a lot of Lakshmi for the money. So they can think about that. Thank you so much, Ari, for that. I do not see any questions right now. So, uh, viewers, if you have any question for Ari, you can send us on carvanheritage@gmail.com, where we can share the questions to Ari through email.
And let me give you a good shout out for one of my friend, which has come with a fantastic book about Pondicherry. If people wants to know the decolonization process of Pondicherry, there's Unsettling Utopia from Jessica Namakkal, that everybody needs to, because I wanted to go there, but it's already the process, reconnaissance process was a messy. But if I go inside, it was too much of details, too many details. So I didn't want to go there. So I just survolé, as we said, the thing. But Unsettling Utopia of Jessica Namakkal is a fantastic book to read, to understand the entire decolonization process of Pondicherry and ongoing colonization.
Yes. Thank you so much. Merci beaucoup, Ari.
Merci, Eshan. C'est moi qui te remercie. Merci
Thank you.
infiniment. À très
And
bientôt.
definitely we will meet again. And I hope to read this book. The review will be out on our Instagram page. For those who wish to know about this book, they can go on our Instagram page. And we might do a little Instagram live someday with Ari again on this book once I finish reading it. And a few announcements for our viewers. We are going to have a lot many great scholars joining us this month. On I think on 20th, I'll just check the calendar. I'm really sorry.
we, we
I
get
have a
we
copy
get
with
lost in
me.
our papers. I know.
Yeah, I have to see all this. Yeah. So on 18th of November, we have Professor Veena Talwar Oldenburg. to speak about the making and shaping of the court city of Lucknow, colonial Lucknow. On 20th November, we have Aparna Vedic, professor at Ashoka University, uh, joining us. On 22nd November, we will be having Professor Chaman Lal from JNU to speak about understanding Bhagat Singh. 24th of November, we have Professor Kama MacLean um, on a revolutionary history of interwar India. 26th November, which I think is the which will be the last lecture for November. Ranjini Majumdar will be joining us. Professor Ranjini Majumdar will be joining us to deliver the Karwan lecture. In addition to this, we really need our viewers' support to sustain Karwan because this Zoom and everything does cost us some money. So we are raising funds for ourselves. The link is in the description and also in the live chat. So if you feel like you can donate any amount on that link, and do support us by subscribing to Karwan on YouTube, on Instagram, on Facebook. If you have any speaker suggestion, if you want to have to see uh, somebody on Karwan, you can share your feedbacks to us through email. Our email is karwanheritage@gmail.com, and we look forward to hearing from you. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining in. Thank you so much, Ari, for taking our time.
Chan, you're doing an amazing job and encore félicitations et bravo. Bravo.
Thank you.
Tout
Thank you,
simplement.
Marty. Have a great evening, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.